Pittsburgh for Monday, July the 22nd, 2019. Let us pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, this evening we have 4 cadet scouts from Bynum Girl Scout troop number 1006. And so, girls, if you would come up, we have Lily Fowler, Mary Collins, Savannah Matthews, and Rebby Goodham. And if you'll just line up right here for me, this is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we'll be hearing from these young women later in the agenda.
Would you guys like to have your picture? Is it okay to put this on Facebook? Oh, yeah.
Keeper of our Facebook page. All right. You have the agenda before you. Is there a modification to either add or subtract any items on the agenda? This would be, I'd be glad to entertain a motion on the regular agenda.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Michael Fiocco.
Second.
Seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed. Motion carries. As to the consent agenda, it has been requested that item number 3 be removed from the consent agenda so that further time can be worked in the development of matters for that public hearing. With that one modification, is there an approval of the other items of the consent agenda?
I would like to make a recommendation on item 3, now that we're going to be pulling it.
Okay.
But would it be, I think it would be a good idea to set it for a presentation by the applicant and some commentary from planning or staff on our first meeting in September. And that would give everybody a chance to get familiar with the document again.
You've heard Michael Fiocco's motion. Is that a motion, Michael?
Yes.
To ask that the presentation by the developer and staff occur prior to public hearing and be held on the first meeting in September. Second? Pamela Baldwin, second. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with a couple of changes. There was one to the minutes that we have before us, and the other one where there were some edits to the CDBG documents.
Yes.
There are a couple of things to clarify in there. So with those modifications, I'll make a motion to approve.
You've heard the modifications. You have the modifications reporting on the desk. Michael Fiocco has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. On the consent agenda, items 1 and 2 with suggested edits. So at this time, I have the honor of calling the young women back up to the front of the chamber. This resolution honoring these young women, they're seeking their silver awards. These are 4 scouts from Scout Troop 2006, and they are doing a project for their silver award, which is described as 50 straws, right? So whereas the silver award is the highest a Girl Girl Scout cadet can earn. And whereas the Silver Award is an opportunity for cadet scouts to show skills such as leadership, organization, determination, and dedication to improve their community. And whereas Cadet Scouts Lily Fowler, Nia Collins, Savannah Matthews, and Rebecca Goddard have dedicated their Silver Award project to one that would reduce plastics from the waste stream by suggesting that local restaurants and citizens use alternatives to plastic straws. And whereas thousands of tons of plastic have become a part of our waste stream, and yet there are several environmentally compatible straws such as compostable straws, metal straws, bamboo, all which would reduce the plastic in our waste. And whereas these scouts have proposed a straw-free day to desire and to publicize their project in the community. Whereas Scouts Lily Fowler, Nia Collins, Savannah Matthews, and Rebecca Goddard visited the mayor of Pittsburgh on July the 3rd to discuss their project and to inquire about other environmentally protected issues that the town is addressing. Now, therefore, the town of Pittsburgh commends Lily Fowler, Nia Collins, Savannah Matthews, and Rebecca Goddard, Cadet Scouts from Bynum Troop 2006, for their leadership, their environmental ingenuity, and community service for their Silver Award project, Skip the Straw, and we recognize the value of this project for the town of Pittsburgh and for the environment. And we hope to pass this in just a moment. Is there a motion to pass the resolution?
I make a motion.
Second.
Let's everybody second. That sounds great. So it passed by unanimous vote of the Board of Commissioners this day, the 22nd of July, 2019. So, congratulations, ladies. And I told them that we would be presenting a signed and sealed copy of the resolution to them at a later time. But for tonight, you'll just have to just pick our singular copy that we have for you. So, Alice, we'll have you, you will send the girls there. Now, the girls asked me, by the way, if they needed to stay for the meeting. Well, there are two environmental things on the agenda, I guess you thought. But lately, our meetings have been taking a very long time. So, however long you want to stay, that will be fine. And if not, then thank you for being with us. Thank you. The next matter on the agenda is Citizens Matters. We have two people signed up for the public expression period, and the first is Grimsby Hall. Did you want to speak on a particular agenda item?
Yes, the
Okay.
park, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. And Randy Bowler, did you want to speak on a particular agenda item or just in general?
Just in general.
Okay, come on up there.
Good evening, Board. Mayor Perry. As you're approaching your last meetings and you're going to get done all the things you want to get done, I think that was great to have the Bynum Troop up here. I just wanted to come to this meeting since this is the first meeting since filing ended, and someone who I filed with in 2011 did not file, but I wanted to thank her for her service because I, among others, were those that asked you to run 8 years ago, and you've done really great service to the community. And I know when we get to December, you're going to get the gold watch and all the rest. But I thought on the first meeting, you should be thanked by someone that was there when we started the process. Obviously, I served with Michael and Pam, and I had some fun with Jay as well. Never had the honor of serving with John, but served with him in the Democratic Party and known him a long time. But Beth, thank you very much for your service. And I know these last meetings will go by quick, and there's a lot of business to do, and I know you'll do a great job.
Thank you very much.
Next is our Commissioner and Manager updates. We have printed updates from the manager. So, Brian Grusek, would you update us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple items related to the UDO, and I think Mr. Jones, town planner, has a rare night off this evening. Otherwise, I was going to make him talk for a little bit. But Just a couple of quick points. First of all, the board did direct staff to remove the tree protection and natural resources overlay sections from the draft UDO. On May 20th, I believe staff worked to remove those sections. They'll be studied in the meantime, and then we'll be discussing them before any final reviews and discussions and certainly approvals are made. We have some remaining work. As you'll recall, Commissioner Fiocco submitted some edits or comments. We're currently reviewing those. We look forward to bringing that all back to you in workshop format for late August, and then hopefully sometime this fall we can begin the process of wrapping that up. A couple other things just want to point out. Water treatment plant, Adam and his team earned what's called the North Carolina Area-Wide Optimization Award for the 5th consecutive year. You'll recall that we made kind of a similar announcement at this point last year, so you may be somewhat familiar with it. But in this case, the state is focusing on turbidity, which then, if a system is featuring a number of turbidity problems, then that kind of creates other issues for the town's treatment system. It should be noted that the town's water treatment plant is exceeding these goals for turbidity on a more stringent level than what the minimum state and federal standards are. So I just wanted to, lend some congratulations to Adam and his team for yet another great year, and we're going to see how long we can keep that rolling. Traffic circle improvement project, something that Elizabeth Goodson, town engineer, and I have been talking about in recent weeks, is the need to replace an existing 2-inch water line that is, I believe, in the south end of the traffic circle. This was something that was more or less discovered during the water main transmission project back in 2012, 2013 now. At that point in time, we didn't really have a plan, nor did we want to kind of move forward with tackling it, given the schedule of that project, because by the time we hit, as you'll recall, by the time we hit the significant work in the traffic circle with regards to the water main project, we were really looking to fill in the dirt and get that thing done. So with this improvement project of the traffic circle, this presents an opportunity for us to replace that 2-inch line with, we were contemplating a 12-inch line at this point in time. That would be done as part of the circle improvement work, and DOT would be considering it a betterment. We'd be looking at that impacting our budget sometime in 2021. But what staff would like to do is present to you a capital. No, I'm not going to say capital project. I believe we're looking at. No, we are kind of looking at that as a capital project budget on that in an upcoming meeting, and we'll go into the technical issues of it a little bit more. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. That's going to be a little bit of cost, but it kind of falls into that category of while we're in there. So while we're in there, there's no better time than this to replace an undersized and old line with an upsized line that I think is going to have some benefits for us system-wide, as well as the services that need it along the way. New Town Hall, thank you very much for participating in the work session this past week. As you recall, we do have another one scheduled for July 30th at 6:30 p.m. So let me know if you have any comments, questions, concerns before that. But I believe that's just about all I have as far as substantial updates. With that, I'd half out and turn it over for any comments or questions, or we can talk more later.
Any questions for Brian Brucebeck?
I have a comment that the 12-inch main replacement is, I think, a very important project. Hard to believe we've got a 2-inch tapped off of a 12-inch, and who knows, it probably goes back up to a 6 or an 8-inch. So I think it will vastly improve our distribution system. So potable supply and the fire protection supply. So I think it's probably a critical improvement.
And Elizabeth, I think, did a pretty good job in leading the charge for the upsize to the 12. I get to the point where I start looking at numbers and while we're in their line item, but no, she's right. It needs to go up to a 12, and I think that's going to pay off in the long run. So,
Thanks for thinking about that, catching that.
Well, one other comment I'd like to make is on the trees and the UDO. Yes, it certainly was true that we did remove tree protection and natural resources from the UDO, and then I think some of us drove by US 64 and saw the absolute slaughter that had occurred at Powell Place near the apartments that are being constructed there. And I think that generated some emails to Jeff Jones with the idea that we probably needed to either approach a freestanding tree protection ordinance so that kind of thing didn't happen again, or add it back into the UDO so that it could have quicker treatment than we had previously thought. So he did point out that, of course, there are certain developments that do not adhere to whatever tree ordinance we will promulgate, including Chatham Park. They are controlled by their own tree protection element. But I think that that was just a really stunning, in a negative kind of way, example of what we need to be thinking about as far as promulgating a freestanding ordinance or working harder on getting it in.
I agree. I thought at one time we had talked about trying to speed that piece of it up a while ago, and somehow it's gotten back on the back burner. But no surprise here, but I definitely would like to see that at least something put in place as soon as possible, because I know outside of Chatham Park there's still a lot of growth that's coming here, and we need to address that more. I agree with you on that.
And Commissioner Foley, I remember similar that I had the impression from our last UDO workshop that while both of those were being treated separately, that Mr. Jones was going to go out and find some examples of maybe a quick and dirty tree protection ordinance that we could, not quick and dirty, but I think he said that he had some at his disposal and that we would be able to do something quickly there. And that was my recollection from that workshop as well. So.
Advocating for that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very good then. This is a time then that we can share with members of the public the additional meetings that we've been to, and sometimes there are a vast number of them, but also summer seems to bring less meetings. But last week I had the pleasure of being one of the elected officials invited to a workshop with Triangle J Council of Governments and the Secretary of DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, Michael Reagan. And for almost 2 hours, Secretary Reagan listened to local mayors and members of the boards of commission and other organizations involved with protection of the environment. It was an amazing meeting. He was very attentive. He was very well qualified, and responded very nicely to some of the concerns that we had. One of the things we were concerned about was increasing our viability with respect to stormwater, and I know that is something that that we didn't have so much concern about for many years, but that now we have more and more integration of the stormwater into our sewer system and having to treat a lot of water that is unnecessary. And so I know that's one of your concerns, Michael Fiocco, but anyway, it was a fascinating conversation, and I was really pleased to be involved in it. And likewise, then a couple of days later, we had further discussion between engineers and members of the environmental community and the our elected Senator Valerie Foushee with respect to the Sanford line and discussion about the NPDES permit. So it was fascinating week. And are there any reports from the EDC or Main Street or Human Relations?
I'd say EDC took the summer off, so I think we'll be meeting again in August. So I'll be attending that. Of course, PBA held the Summerfest, and I think a lot of folks were deterred by the rain, but I assure you, it was very comfortable in the rain. It was a very hot day, so I think it was a success. Main Street is plugging along, and we have a design committee meeting this coming Wednesday, and we've got 3 or 4 different facade grants that we're considering, so making a lot of progress in that regard, and hopefully we'll get those improvements in downtown soon.
I attended a Chatham County Arts Council meeting, and just want to announce that there's going to be an event on September 29th. It's going to be called Chatham Experience, and it's going to be held at the Chatham County Beverage District. There's going to be performers like the Bluegrass Experience, the Chatham Rabbits, local school children will be performing. It is a fundraiser for the Arts Council, and money raised will go toward having a visiting artist as part of the Artists in Schools initiative. The goal is to have every school in Chatham County have the benefit of a visiting artist, and that does take some funds. So I encourage everybody to turn out to this event. It'll benefit all school children in Chatham County.
I do have one item to share from the County Climate Change Advisory Committee of interest, I think, to the public and the board perhaps. That group a subcommittee is working to organize an electric car awareness event, and may even involve people having an opportunity to test drive an electric car. And the dates are uncertain, but one of the ideas that's been proposed, and I think it may still be in discussion, is having it on September 22nd with the Pepperfest. Perhaps not right in downtown, but perhaps on the same day. So I'll report more as I learn more.
Very exciting. Anything else? That brings us then to old business. The first matter is the wastewater condition assessment and asset management program development. And our engineer, Elizabeth Gibson, will make presentation.
Good evening. This is a project that has been going on since prior to me arriving, and so we want to wrap it up. And one of the steps that needs to be done is the board needs to accept the report. And so we have the condition assessment notebook. We did not include this in your packet, but if anybody would like to read this full and involved technical document, you're welcome to come and join me in my office and read it at any point. We'll also try and put it on the website so that it's available. But it includes some information about sewer lines and manholes. And I'm going to let Brian Odom share a little bit. I just said that, Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
We got multiple Brians, and I just realized I've introduced multiple ones in the last couple of weeks, and I was like, please let me have just said the right one. Brian Odom. Well, I think I've got 5 or 6 different consultants, all with Brian's as contacts. So there we go. But Brian has been helping us with this, and so I'm going to let him tell a little bit about the project and what they've done. And the goal of this is for you just to hear the update and accept the report. And if there's questions, we can answer those after his presentation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight and to share just a little bit about the great project we had the opportunity to work with Elizabeth and other members of the staff in terms of trying to help implement a more sustainable program for being able to help manage the sewer assets within the town. I'm an engineer. I like numbers. So a couple of quick numbers. There are 756 manholes in the town of Pittsburgh. And currently about 32 miles of sewer collection system. Now that's obviously getting ready to change just a little bit. But that 32 miles, some of it's been around for a long, long time. And some of it is in better shape than others. And so of 756 manholes, we worked with the town to help acquire a $150,000 grant from the state to come in and do some initial condition assessment, trying to find some of the challenges in the collection system. So of those 756 manholes, we went out in the field and poked our head in 187. That's almost 25% of the system. We dropped some smoke bombs out in the system and see where we could find it coming up in spots where it wasn't supposed to, which is an indication perhaps of where rainwater may be getting into the collection system.
That's our integrated system.
Far less integrated than others that we work with, to your credit. We also put a camera in a portion of the system, in a portion of the Robertson Creek outfall, where that's a critical backbone of the system. And so we wanted to kind of get some condition information that we could utilize and update and get into the GIS database, which is kind of the central point where town staff can gather information about the collection system, what you've got, where it is, what condition it's in, etc. And so the opportunity there was to go out in the field, gather that data, and then come back and begin to look at not only what can we do with that data, which it revealed some immediate opportunities to help reduce rainfall in the system, some inflow and infiltration, a couple of defects that good opportunity to go out and address now before they get so bad that the solution might be more costly. But also good opportunities to identify where we could maintain capacity in the system, especially as you continue to have so much growth, and get some of that extraneous flow out. So where this got a little bit different, and where Pittsboro is in a position that I think is on the forefront of communities in North Carolina right now, is we took the opportunity to come in, and I'm going to step around here for just a moment. We'll be all right if you guys hear me and I perhaps do this. So you got your sewer collection system, you see some colors. What that is a criticality rate. Okay, red, green's pretty good. As it transitions to red, red's worrisome, right? Took the opportunity to develop a criticality score. Its likelihood of failure and its consequence of failure, to try to get an understanding of which assets may be most critical in the collection system. And the way that we do that is to take that condition information that we help to gather, that will come in continuously from town staff as they're out there in the system, touching it, preparing it, looking at it, cleaning at it every day. That information is going to come back into the database. And you're going to have the opportunity to run tools that exist within the database. Now, this isn't additional software that the town has to go buy or has to maintain. This resides within a platform that your folks are already trained to use, you already own, doesn't cost you any additional money, and it's your tool. You own it. And so we're able to provide and create and enhance what these tools are, so as condition information comes in, town staff can quickly prioritize which of those assets may be more critical than others, either because they're perhaps in poor condition, or perhaps we're not sure what the condition is, but if that water line in the traffic circle fails, it's going to create some challenges, right? Okay. So, make sure I do this right. There we go. So we were able to derive and develop a criticality score for each one of the assets in the collection system, the manholes and the sewer lines. And when doing so, it allows staff to slice and dice the data and get a sense of what's driving that criticality. Again, some assets it may be more about condition, which means perhaps you need to repair it, renew it, replace it, rehabilitate it in some form or fashion. It may be, again, more about consequence of failure. Where it's located, if it fails, it may take out 4-lane road. It may take out the traffic circle, which will create some significant traffic problems. Perhaps it's right next to the creek, and if it fails, you're going to have a spill, which can be much more costly than some other areas. So in slicing and dicing this data very quickly with your tool, you're able to get a very quick sense of perhaps how you go look at those assets. Some may need more frequent attention to make sure that you know what condition that's in before it fails. Some may be we need to get some point repair or something out there to extend the life of that asset. And in doing so, the town staff is going to be able to make more informed decisions about where to focus the limited resources you've got in that collection system over time. And in doing so, get a bigger bang for your buck. Now, where you guys are a little bit different, there are a number of communities in North Carolina, few your size, most of them are larger, that have kind of a prioritization tool for their assets in the sewer collection system. What we work with town staff to do is also to come in and build a cost planning tool. It sits within that GIS program. It takes all that condition information, takes some of the basic information about the collection system, and the intention there is to be able to quickly get a sense of what will it take to rehab, renew that system. Now, think of this as engineer's delight, right? The output of all that great visual data. Well, what this represents when you look at the whole thing is every sewer line in town. We know what size it is, we know what material it is, and what we can do is get a quick assessment using baseline consistent cost data that's used uniformly to understand what it might cost to replace that line, what it might cost to rehab that line based upon its size, its material, its depth, its location. And when we make quick cost projections, what we can do is look at, by criticality, right? All those sewer lines rated as a 5, as most critical, right? What would it cost to replace or renew those? That number that's just off the screen, don't quote me here, if I remember correctly, it was about $885,000. Right? If you just focus on now that doesn't mean all of them need attention right now. You may need to go look at them first to confirm, but you at least get a quick sense of scale of what you can do as Elizabeth and manager are working on capital planning in the future. As this information comes in, you can run those tools very quickly and get a pretty quick sense of the capital planning needs in the collection system. And in doing so with better information, it allows you to run some scenarios, do some what-ifs in a much more efficient way than you would otherwise do when you've got a calculator or a spreadsheet and a pen, the typical engineering tools that we have available to us. So this cost tool, the addition piece within your database that sits within this prioritization tools, is pretty unique. I believe you're one of about 4 utilities perhaps that we've worked with in helping to create that within that tool to enhance their capital planning process. And the intention of that state grant was, again, to help create a more sustainable program with a higher return on investment for systems like yours to be able to understand where to put those assets, where to put the resources you got in the assets to make it as efficient and as effective as possible. And with a tool like this, it's a great step as you continue to feed information that it's going to put you all in a great position of being able to do that going forward. And I applaud you for taking the steps that you have.
Fantastic. It's really nice to have that information.
So with that, if there are any questions, comments that I or Elizabeth certainly can try to help answer for you.
So, Mr. Odom,
yes.
The geographical information is very easy to grasp. It's a picture. We know where those streets are in town, so we can understand where those lines are and where those manholes are specifically. Given that the cost planning tool is on a per unit or per fixture basis?
Per asset, yes, sir.
Per asset, thank you. Is there another way, other than just visually using the GIS tool, to, for example, do as Ms. Goodson has done with this Town Circle project, to identify when a project is afoot right here, for some other reason, that we could go in and take care of those other assets as a group?
Well, I think one of the great things this does is it does allow you to come in and say, we've seen this in other places. We're doing a project here right now. Before we go any further, let's just look at what the prioritization says.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell us there's something else that's critical that we may need to address while we've got the dirt uncovered,
Yes,
while we're
that's
right
what I'm
there.
getting at.
This is a great tool to help do that. Think of this as a planning level tool. When you want to know exactly what it's going to cost to go in there and repair, replace specific elements of the system, you need a little sharper pencil than the cost tool here is intended to provide. And that's important to understand.
I'll tell you how I used it already with the town hall project. We've been looking at the fact we've got to do some utility work on the block around that project, and we have pulled this up and looked. Are there any utilities in those roads adjacent to that project that we know are high critical needs? Okay, that's one level. That's not the only level to consider, but that was one level of, did we need to be talking about sewer right off the bat? And there was not in this particular case. So there's some water needs that we're looking into deeper, but this tool did help with that question.
I think one piece of information you probably have now, it's a little bit more informed than you might have had 6 months ago, is what would it cost us to replace the system? And it's a planning level assessment, but at least you've got some sense of scale of that, and in doing so, not just a sense of scale, but which of those most critical assets, again, breaking it down. So if we wanted to focus on one area, it's very easy to take that and then slice and dice the data any number of ways.
Wonderful. Sounds like it's a great tool.
I will point out, you mentioned that most of this is done through a GIS system. We've got GIS software. There is a higher level license that we've identified we do not have. We may need to purchase that at some point. The majority of all the tools we've identified we can use, but there may be, in order to run some of the back-end updates, that there may be some additional. So I just want to share that there may be an upgrade that we do need to request in a future budget request, but we do have enough to make good use of this now.
At one time, we had only limited staff who had access to this GIS information. Has that expanded now?
We still have very limited staff that can use it and are
I thought it was an issue of desktop licenses and capability.
We do have just a few licenses and folks that are familiar with it. I'm going to, most of the time, use the spreadsheet version that's going to extract information out and then work from there.
Okay.
But we've talked about how the engineers, we use it to pull out.
Having that database is a good central repository that allows you to update it consistently, get it out as necessary. How you tend to look and utilize or extract that data, again, you've got a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to do that and utilize it in a way that's comfortable. I know enough GIS to be dangerous, like Elizabeth. If I'm using the data, I'm probably using it in a little different way. I'm getting somebody from GIS to give you what I need.
Got it.
Brian, I have one question. I noticed we have several lines that are still clay. Are they on the top priority for replacement, hopefully?
A number of them rated as critical. And you can see when in slicing and dicing the data, sometimes this is a level 5 here. But really what's driving this criticality is more the consequence of it failing, perhaps more so than its other condition pieces. The clay pipe is something that I think certainly bears looking at. It's interesting the things that and what we saw in the 25% of the manholes that we went and saw. We saw a variety of challenges that weren't necessarily limited just to clay pipe. And age is not always the best thing to go after when identifying whether or not something may be in worse condition than another. Kind of like the car, sometimes the miles is more important than the age. But a number of the clay pipe components came up as being of concern. And so when we built this tool, we built some questions and logic into it. If it's clay, we would propose to replace it with something else. If it's buckle iron, we'd probably keep buckle iron. So there's some of that back-end GIS mumbo-jumbo that goes into kind of trying to evaluate what the planning options are.
So let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you be using this in terms of when you get different projects in just if someone is getting ready to build something or the developer, will you be doing this as ongoing process in terms of planning tool, just to know even before they start?
If somebody's building in an area where we've got existing utilities, this would be a tool that we could use to identify when upgrades need to be made to existing utilities. If they are in a new area, obviously this will not speak to that. But new utilities, as they're being built, and we have as-built, that information will be brought into this. And those obviously will be things that have low priority because they're new utilities, but we'll have all the data to add them in, and they'll populate and they'll be scored accordingly. But yes, we'll use it as one of the tools we use.
So if they're going to connect to it, what I'm saying.
If they're connected to an
the old-
existing system, yes, we will use it. And if they have any reason they need to upsize something, then we can use it as our guide as to what was recommended of if it needed to be a different material, a different, any of the components that are spoken to here, in addition to the design appropriate to their development.
Seems to be very good too.
It's also something that has informed the budget process this past time. There was information that was in the budget that was a part of the first section of projects out of this chart. There's a summary chart that kind of walks through the projects by year. And so that is what we pulled out and worked with Brian on what the best initial projects were to help us get some things going, get some things planned, because it's going to take, these are sometimes large scale, large dollar value, and we need to plan for them over the next couple of years.
Elizabeth, do we have our entire system in this GIS now?
We have the line work in there, we have the data best we've got, but there was only 25% of the manholes actually physically inspected and additional.
There's still some attribute data. You guys have got a lot of it in there. There's still some attribute data, and I don't recall off the top of my head how many assets might be missing. Some of this feedback. Every system's like that.
Every bit of data we've got is into this.
If I remember correctly, y'all are in pretty good shape relative to a lot of systems we see.
And I guess every one of those dots represents a manhole that we have data on.
At least some pieces.
No, the map.
The map.
It represents every manhole you've got in the system, period.
Yes.
So there's no missing manholes. All manholes are identified.
That's right. There may be a few manholes that don't even be there anymore. We came across one or two of those. This is intended to get they're out there. They're in the database. They may be missing some attribute information. You tell me to be quiet whenever you want.
I think that's accurate. It is the best information we have.
And I saw a depth line.
Yes, sir.
So we've got inverts. We understand the system.
We may not know that on all manholes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's some of the missing
Yeah.
attributes.
And so we were clear on where we made some assumptions, where we had to make assumptions about depth, and where we have actual data. So that again, as
you go out there, you can collect it.
Exactly. And
Gotcha.
it's a journey. This is intended to really be one of those good guidebooks. As you go on that journey, you're able to write down where you've been, what you saw, what's in there, and utilize those notes to keep improving where you point yourself on the next step of your journey.
You said 32 miles of pipe. Is that gravity in force main?
Yes, sir. I think it's pretty close to it.
Did we have a clue as to what the break is between the two?
We do, but not off the top of my head.
Okay. So I saw that we did some TVing of the system, which I'm really interested in trying to solve this I&I issue. You know, the smoke will do some of that, but it seems like drop a camera in there, you should be able to find some data on that. What does it cost to run TV through a pipe per foot? I'm just curious.
It varies by location and size. So we inspected a bit of the Roberts Creek outfall, and we inspected a couple, spot right back over here, and I remember this spot specifically for a reason. Right now, if I was budgeting for a typical 8-inch pipe or maybe 12-inch, I would probably budget somewhere on the order of we've got an estimate to do that, so I can go back and pull that number. If I recall, I think we probably put $2.50 a foot, $2.50 a foot maybe through. Some of the manholes that we saw in the system, frankly, are probably as big a source of some inflow. Infiltration. And maybe some as big an opportunity to get some things. But I tell you right now, we found in those direct the highest opportunity to recover some stuff. We made that crystal clear. There's a pipe that's got a hole in it, and it's right underneath the creek. And I don't think it takes an engineer to figure out there's probably some water coming in that pipe all the time, especially in the winter.
I think part of the spreadsheet that's got it kind of itemized out per year is the annual recommendation of a certain number of pipe or
Yes, ma'am.
to TV. So kind of building in a system that we do this ongoing, that we service our assets, a portion of the line every year, and so we break it into maybe once every 5 years that we're cycling through and checking for problems in the line. And so obviously it'll take us a couple of years to get through that whole cycle, but that would be a way to break it into pieces.
Well, I guess we just identified our highest priority.
There's a couple of them I've asked, and let you point on a map where you would recommend we focus.
The ones with big holes under streets.
That was my question, is I need those like stars on a map.
There's some low-hanging fruit, to be sure.
So the manholes, is the water coming in through the top or coming in through groundwater, or both?
Depends on which manholes.
Okay.
We've got some that I think are pretty obvious adjacent to low-lying areas where it probably doesn't have to rain very hard at all. They've got holes in the top of the manhole. I suspect there's water getting in. There's a number where I think the joints, frankly, just apparent there's some infiltration that's weaving through those pretty consistently. But it's like any collection system, it's a mix of challenges. But there's some good low-hanging fruit.
What's the difference between inflow and infiltration?
Absolutely. Inflow is what we refer to when rainfall can kind of get the direct access in or rapid access in. That's when you've got a hole in the manhole. You've got the holes that are in manhole lids that get in there. You've got a pipe that's got a big hole in it. The water's coming in. When it's dry, sewer may be going out. Infiltration is where you've got groundwater that over time is kind of leaking in, seeping into the system, whether it's a pipe, whether it's a manhole. Inflow tends to get into manholes, infiltration tends to get into pipes, but it's not always 100% true. Yes, sir.
One question I would like: how was our manhole easements? How was our easements? Were they accessible?
Yes, sir. I mean, the easement pieces that we focused on are actually in pretty good shape. Again, staff was absolutely a pleasure to work with and made it very easy to get out there and do it. Again, I'm an engineer. I'm kind of tasked with finding the challenges, but it's easy to focus on the negative when there's a lot of good stuff. You've got a collection system that is in pretty good shape. It's got some great opportunity to help tighten it up, but the access to it is very, very easy. There's a couple of manholes, unsolicited comments, so let's might whack me here in a minute. The easements are accessible. The challenge is try climbing on a manhole and pulling a manhole lid off when the manhole is that high. Now it's that high to stay 1 foot above where you think the water is going to rise in a flood. There may be a way to flood-proof that and push it down and make it easier to access, but the question, you got to make sure when you do that, it doesn't send the sewer out somewhere else when it's under pressure. I'll pay for that one later.
Lots of
Further
opportunities.
Further questions for Brian Odom or Elizabeth Goodson?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I think just to make it official, if you would make a motion to accept the report that we have received from WKK.
That would satisfy the audience.
Second.
Moved by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will proceed with a water asset management project in the coming months. So this is something we want to focus on, making sure we understand all of our assets. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item under old business is to appoint a TARPO representative. This says that this is the DOT's complex committee system whereby they choose a person from each county and then choose a person to be a representative from the number of towns within that county. And so our particular district needs a representative to serve both the towns of Siler City, Pittsboro, and Goldston. The representative for the last several years has been Larry Cheek on the town board in Siler City. And when I came on the board, Larry indicated to me that he would be more than glad to advocate for things that Pittsboro wanted, and I thanked him for that. But we also have so many things going on that it's not only a matter of the person who is the TARPO representative from supporting them, but it's also according to a very complex system of points being given to different projects. So we had a lot going on the last 2 years, and Larry has served, I believe, for at least 4, perhaps 6 years. And the last representative that we had that actually served as a representative, I served as an alternate. Was you, Randy Lowler, was it not?
Yes, I was the chairman for 7 of the 8 years.
And the chairman now is a man from the county commission at Moore County, I believe. And so Larry Cheek has been the representative for the municipalities of Chatham County. Mike Dasher now, as the chairman of the county commission, serves to represent the county's interests. So, as you know from having dealt with transportation issues over the last little while, it is important who serves on these committees. When I mentioned it previously, there were 2 people who were interested in serving as a representative. It would just be as an alternate if Larry Cheek continues to serve. Yes, Randy.
If they have not changed the rules of the board, all 3 members of the municipalities in Chatham, which used to be the mayors of Siler City, Pittsboro, and Goldston,
yes.
Although I think Mayor Grimes let Mayor Pro Tem Cheek, Larry served with me. You all are on the board, you're just not officers. So you are voting members, you're just not an officer when at the meeting. But you're supposed to caucus and elect your representative. And the question that I've asked this board to ask Siler City, at some point Siler City pulled out of Triangle J. Are they back in Triangle J?
They are in Triangle J. Yes.
They're in Triangle J
They
now,
are in
but there was a
Triangle
period where they were not in. So I don't know when you have the caucus meeting between Tim Cunup, the mayor of Pittsboro, and Mayor Grimes' representative, but that's how you elect that representative, and it happens every year.
Well, and I've gotten a call from Mayor Grimes saying that Larry Cheek wishes to serve again as the spokesperson, with additional thought that there would also be a lot of consultation. Tim Cunup, mayor of Goldston, thinking that nobody else was interested, initially supported John Grimes's wish that Larry Cheek continue to serve in the capacity as the municipal representative. And I indicated that I thought that it was, quite frankly, Pittsboro's turn to have that person serving, and that we were going to be choosing an upcoming representative. So we will choose a representative tonight if the board feels that it's time to choose one. And then the question will arise as to whether that representative will indeed be a sitting and voting member or will be an alternate to Larry Cheek. Now, in all fairness, Larry Cheek came up to me at the last meeting. This is a group that meets once a quarter and alternates the meetings between here in Pittsboro and down in Sanford. And he asked me about the upcoming election and the choosing of representatives, and I told him that I thought it was Pittsboro's turn. And he said, well, that's fine, but apparently he's changed his mind in the meantime. So Mayor Grimes was advocating very strongly for him and called me back to say that that would be Larry's wish to continue to serve. So I'll open the floor for thoughts or nominations for the town's representative to TARPO.
Mayor, when you first asked if I would be interested, I mentioned that I would, and I still am. And I agree wholeheartedly that I think Larry's been in the position for 6 years. I believe Pittsboro should have a representative, and I'd be happy to serve in that capacity.
I'll support Michael with that.
I nominate my field coach.
I don't think I should attempt to take on that additional burden. However, I would like to express interest, Commissioner Kyoko, in cases where you're assuming that we're successful in ascending to this spokesperson role and this board votes to approve you in that capacity. I'd be very happy to serve in your absence if you were sick or unable to attend a meeting. I'd like to begin learning more about the responsibilities.
And I realize, too, that John Bonnet serves in his capacity of his employment in the area of transportation. So I think that's a lovely addition to the expertise. So there was a motion by Jay Farrell, seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Mayor, for advocating.
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel strongly that we have a greater voice, and it's when you think about all the projects that we've got Chatham Park, we've got the truck route, the famous truck route, and so I'm looking forward to passing that down.
I agree with you that it does seem like Pittsboro should have a leadership position with everything that we have going on.
Yeah. Excellent. Under new business, we want to talk about the proposal to name Town Park on Rectory Street. Paul Horn, if you'll lead us in this discussion, and then we'll have supporting comments by Brinsley Hawks as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. This is a great opportunity, and as your agenda item mentioned, this will be co-presented with Brinsley Hobbs and Stephanie Bass, who is a PARAB representative and also a neighbor to the park to the north. Was unable to attend, but the PARAB chair is here, Noah Becker, and he would like to say a few words as well. But we have a tremendous opportunity here, and I won't read through all the background. We've got a historian here who can do a better job of that, and I think our PARAB representative can speak to the enthusiasm since the very beginning of this. Since they first learned about the history of this park, they were enthusiastic about naming it after Lewis Freeman, and also I think we have an opportunity to let it be a park that celebrates Black history in Pittsboro writ large beyond just Lewis Freeman. But we want to check in with you, the board, and to make sure before we really begin the design process in earnest that there's a an interest in doing that. And Madam Mayor, you were involved in the land donation process and were instrumental in getting this land donated from Jane Pyle. You may, I trust you have some insights on this as well. But without further ado, I think I'll let Grimsley Hobbs speak about the history of this property and the man that was Lewis Freeman.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. I want to go first.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank you. Thank you for the time to talk about this. So on June 12th, we had a PARA meeting. We have it every month. And it was a joint PARA meeting and a stakeholder meeting. So we met and went and toured the property on Rectory Street. So it was nice to go see the property. And then we just discussed the historical significance of the park. And then as a part of that meeting, PARA passed a resolution unanimously to name the park Lewis Freeman Historic Park. The name came up multiple times. We've been, discussing it at prior meetings, talking about park updates and things like that. And so the name of this park had come up multiple times, and we were all excited to have the chance to pass the resolution, and we hope that you'll pass the resolution as well. Thank you.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the name Lewis Freeman Historic Park, because I've seen Lewis Freeman Park, and so I was curious about historic and had a conversation with some folks about it. So I'm curious, I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think Grims can talk more about the history of the park, for sure, if you're happy to address that question, ma'am.
Yep.
And I can say that I like historic because it's evocative. If it's just someone's name, we don't know if that person donated land or gave a bunch of money or what. But if there's a historic associated with it, it kind of draws you in. You may know nothing about this person. Oh, what's historic about it? Then you want to learn more. That's what I like.
Agreed, and that was the feedback I got, that it adds poignancy and it adds to the story. And the person's interest in finding out what is the history here, as opposed to the guy. Yeah. So, totally support.
Commissioners, nice to be before you again. I just want to express my tremendous support of the two things. One, of the Chatham County Historic Association, who are unanimously behind recognizing and naming this park for Lewis Freeman, and me personally, as the current occupant of Lewis Freeman's house, with a number of additions. Stephanie Bass couldn't be here. She asked me to speak in the same manner with her. We are both residents of that block. Lewis Freeman owned all but 2 parcels on that block when he died in about 1840. He was born in 1783, as best we know, which is before the Revolutionary War was over. And so this is, and he was is recognized as the most successful black settler of Pittsburgh. I'm convinced he must have been a very remarkable man. The many things that we do know about him, and a lot that we don't know that I hope we'll uncover as part of this process. He built a one-room house where he lived with his family, and that house, that one room, is now part of my office, or our professional office. And that site actually feels like a park, and I'm very happy that the Piles donated that to the city. It's actually a wonderful little spot there. Wonderful walnut trees that are protected, buffered by bamboo, also by the waterway there. It's a very gentle place. It ought to be a good place for people to go and enjoy peacefully that setting. And an opportunity for us to explain and celebrate the life of Lewis Freeman. My understanding is there were a lot of emancipated slaves like Lewis Freeman in Pittsburgh and Chatham County. So we have more to learn, and so I'm very excited about it. And I'm happy to work with Paul and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. They're doing a good job. I think it'll be a terrific addition, and I'd be glad to cooperate and support it in any way that we can. Any questions I can answer?
Questions for Ms. Sehoff?
Is there anyone in memory or in documentation any way we could tell when the bamboo came as an addition to that land?
I thought you were going to ask another question. No, the answer is I don't know, but it's been there for a long time. And personally, I like it very much. It's a great buffer against the properties next door, which are not bad properties, but it actually sort of encloses it. It's a great habitat for birds. If you go down there now, we have a little bamboo room, and there's some thought with the designers that actually this might become a sort of some sort of carved out areas within the bamboo story areas for school children and other people. I thought you were going to ask if we know anything about his descendants, and we do. And they are here. They are around. They are quite they're remarkable. I've been in communication with one of them. He's a doctor, but others have served in government, and we're hopeful. I would be hopeful, and the Historic Association would be hopeful that as part of this process that we might bring that family that could come to the opening of the celebration to sort of recognize Lewis Freeman and in this town.
There's some information online about him. It's fascinating, some of the stories that are online about him and the struggles as a free man to try to help people that were enslaved at that time, including taking on children, technically slaves, but seeming to rescue these children, and who had a son, even though his father was free, his son was not. And his son ended up going to New York, not knowing he would ever see his family again in order to be free. And so it's such a compelling, what an incredible man, the things that he must have gone through. I was wondering, I've not been able to find a photograph of him. Is there one that exists?
No, we don't know that. But, I feel like there's stuff to be dug up that we can find. I think the incentive now will be more than ever, and the Historic Association is interested in that, and the family might actually be able to contribute more to this as well. So, anyway, I'm very, very happy that you're proposing to do this, and we would like to be part of it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to say that I think that's a great idea, Mr. Moore, Hobbs, to name that park Lewis Freeman Historic Park. And by doing that, I will make a motion to approve the resolution to name Lewis Freeman Historic Park. And thank you all very much for that.
Second that.
Moved by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by Bet Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. And let me add, if I might, that I was asked to contact the family of Jane Pyle, and I did so by email. Her sister, Nancy Simon, who was the executor of her estate, lives now in Montana, and she has a brother and sister in California. They have not gotten back to me yet, but I think we all felt, and Bet Wilson Foley, you were one of the people that articulated this so nicely in an email, that Jane herself was a very modest woman. She was somebody who was so concerned and studied Chatham County history so much that we can't imagine that Jane herself wouldn't just have loved to have had the park named after the historic owner of the property rather than her, even though it was she that made the gift, or it was her beneficiaries who made the gift after her death. And so, anyway, I will report back to you if there's any consternation, but I'm sure the family will agree that this is a perfectly wonderful honor and gift for the Freeman family.
Matt had also recommended a place for class there.
Yes.
To say that was there, and I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said to the family that their gift should be honored, especially knowing that I guess we'd always referred to it as Jane Powell Park, but this is much the better thing. So
They Paul indicated what the implication was, that there, of course, would be information about to Freeman, but then some mentioned that it was donated by James.
Do you have any type of design, you working with the design company?
We really wanted to get the naming and have a very inclusive process, and so we wanted to really stop the design until we brought broad spectrum of voices to the table to really get a lot of community input before moving forward. So I think we want to not go in with preconceived ideas and just hear what the community wants. And of course, the site itself has a lot of constraints. It's small and it lends itself to what it looks like a really nice little passive park for picnics and that kind of thing. But we have a great design team, and I think they'll be able to come up with something that honors the space and honors the history. And we hope that you will be part of this process as well and contribute your ideas and your insights as we go forward.
I think it's a good strategy to have established the name, and I think that will influence the design. So, yeah.
thank you. All right. Under the next item of new business, we are going to ask you to take a look at the resolution in favor of humane national policy on immigration. The reason that this matter came before us was that the county passed a similar resolution, and Karen Howard sent it to me and asked if the town would join in the resolution. And if I may read it, whereas all leaders and citizens of goodwill understand the necessity and wisdom of reforming the immigration system of the United States, and that a bipartisan solution is the best solution. And whereas in the absence of this reform, conditions on the Mexican border and at ports of entry generally have become a source of international criticism and mounting dismay and disappointment at home. And whereas this global criticism and domestic concern rests upon indisputable evidence that federal authorities are separating families, holding minors under inhumane conditions, denying access to counsel, prohibiting third-party inspection of detention facilities, and blocking safe routes to asylum. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Pittsboro Board of Commissioners formally ask our congressmen and our senators to use their influence and intercession to alleviate the physical and legal condition of the thousands currently in detention and commit themselves to a reform of our immigration law that is consistent with long-held national values of humane and compassionate treatment for all who seek to join our community. Would the board care to discuss the resolution?
I greatly appreciate, Mayor, you bringing this to our board. My understanding is that the Board of County Commissioners has already voted on very similar language. Is that correct? And approved that language? I also think that it's remarkably well written. I think that it uses balanced language. I appreciate the bipartisan emphasis. And it's a subject that is just so painful to be aware of in the news. And I support the resolution.
Other comments?
I make a motion to approve.
Moved by Bette Wilson Foley. Seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Is there further discussion, or are we ready to vote? Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Under board directives, we are back considering two things which we have talked about on previous occasions. I would hate to think that our our spouses or our dogs and cats would appreciate seeing us at the hour of 8:25. But, I think the last time we were relatively quick in a board meeting. There were some jokes about people being shot as they entered their front door.
Too early.
But being a pacifist Quaker myself, I'll have to say that the resolution regarding, which is the first one here on our agenda, regarding the application of herbicides and pesticides, we postponed from last time because John Bonnet had brought forward to us a more specific thought about integrated pest management, IPM, and this program. And what has been done with this resolution is it sort of combined our interest as a town in making sure that our employees were not exposing themselves or the town's population or the town's animal population to any kind of dangerous chemicals. And there has been a link shown between glyphosate containing herbicides and certain blood cancers such as non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So the very first portion of the resolution talks about us as the town of Pittsburgh wanting to limit. We're not talking about a complete ban. We're not talking about preventing the sale of such herbicides. As a matter of fact, in the course of looking at this resolution, one of the things that I did was to talk to several of the farm and seed and feed folks here in town, and some of them admitted, quite frankly, that having herbicides really used depends on where you are and what the area that you're concerned with. If there's a telephone pole in Pittsburgh, it's pretty easy to take your weed eater and just zip around that little telephone pole. But if you're treating a 50-acre tract of soybeans or some crop that you're trying to grow, then it may be much more important to have an effective herbicide that can be dealt with on a broad scale basis, protecting our town from herbicides that was sort of the beginning of my concern. So I don't know if people have studied the resolution, but there are guidelines here, the goals for the program and how it's to be implemented, and the conduct that the town would have to implement the IPM program. Are there any questions? Or John, do you want to give additional information, because this was sort of the product of some of your work?
Well, I also couched it my hopes that we would table this definitely till today. That this would give an opportunity for staff to report to us their thoughts, their concerns, their suggestions for how to improve this document. So, Mr. Griesbeck?
Yeah, like we had said before, there's really not an issue from the staff perspective as far as what direction the board would like to head with this type of resolution. I'm sure Mr. Horn, if he's still here, can attest. Our use of herbicides in the town are relatively minimal compared to, I think, some other communities already. There's going to be times when we do have to use them. If we're overrun by kudzu or something like that, to be extreme. But the town, I think, is in a position currently to comply with whatever direction the board wants to go with this. I think, as far as boots on the ground work that's happening right now, I know John Poteet, Streets and Utilities Director, is following up with some folks that he has that are more in awares than we are currently as far as what sort of products that we could use. A lot of times what happens, for example, maybe the things that folks may not be totally aware of is that there is there is some weed control and grass control that's oftentimes done in the seams along curb and gutter, sometimes in the seams between sidewalk stones, for example. I think some of that work is unfortunately necessary to help maintain those structures at times. Whether we can use different products or not is something I think that we're capable of exploring further, willing to do. So, I don't know if that is too simple of an answer, but it's kind of where we've been at for a while.
No, I think that's good. And when I ran into John Poteet not long ago, he indicated that he had salespeople virtually looking for our town business who were offering products that would be alternatives to the Glyphosate products. So I thought that was very interesting that it had received enough notoriety that he had people actually preparing to market it to the town. And Paul Horn, I'm wondering, do you have a policy about chemicals in the parks for the children?
We do. We've been actually pretty proactive in this, particularly for Kiwanis Park, which is for little kids. We actually stopped using glyphosate there in September of 2018. A lot of it, so we've explored, we're using now Miramichi Green. We've been using that for about a year. Our landscaper's been tracking it. He says he feels like it's about as effective. It's part of that is because weeds have become resistant to Roundup, so you're having to use more of it and use it more often, whereas some of these other things approach it in a different way, and it's a toss-up. We also, for that part, you can spray pesticides under someone's license. So if you have a license, your employees can spray under that. I don't even really want them doing that. I'm saying if only the license holder is going to be spraying. What do we do use? The Miramichi Green. Our main landscaper has a degree of environmental science from UNC Wilmington. The manager of the landscape company that does Mary Holmes Park has a bachelor's in plant science. We just hired someone to do back area of Kiwanis. He has about 40 years doing invasive removal, has a bachelor's in plant science. So these are people, the one who does Kiwanis has little kids. I have little kids. I don't want little kids playing around any chemical that I wouldn't want my kids playing around, so I think we all share your concerns. But these are professional people that aren't just willy-nilly, spraying randomly. They're very calculated and precise in what they do.
Spell Miramichi?
M-I-R-I-M-I-C-H-I Green, and it's actually made in Castle Hayne, North Carolina. We've also used the Tick Warriors, which is made here in Pittsburgh, North Carolina. We've used that not as an herbicide, but for tick control. When Jennifer, who owns the company, was just formulating it, she gave us a free trial on the disc golf course out at Rock Ridge, and we didn't have any kind of scientific controls. We can't really say. It was a weird, dry summer, so who knows if it worked or not, but she certainly has a lot of testimonials on our website for the product.
What was that?
One, Tick Warriors.
Okay.
And for the record, we're not endorsing or not endorsing any of these products. We're just letting you know what we've used in the past. One other one that we're considering, I just started researching this, is called Ecomite. And what's interesting about that one is that it has a minimal risk exempt, so it doesn't really fall under typical pesticide laws. The other thing is that it has a, what do they call it, a no re-entry period for it. So that means right after you spray it, in theory, you could go and be in it and it wouldn't be a danger. Roundup actually has a 12-hour delay that you really shouldn't be in there after it's sprayed without equipment. So I know nothing other than the marketing material that I've read on it. No experience with it, but it's something that would, I don't think, fall under those categories, and I may be mistaken about that. I've researched it thoroughly. but it may be a good product that's safe and doesn't even come into effect under the policy that you're have proposed here. We use a lot of mechanical removal methods when we can. We have a couple of extractigators. They're basically big levers. You put them on the bottom of a Iliagnus plant, for instance, autumn olive, which you see rampant here as invasive species, and you can just uproot the entire thing. So we have used that with citizen groups with the Pittsburgh Elementary School to remove invasives on the trail to Town Lake Park. We've used it, had contractors pull some up at Mary Hayes Barber Homes Park, and then a Boy Scout troop came in and stacked them up and helped get them off the site, which was a lot of fun. And but they're amazingly effective, and it just uproots the entire thing. If there's wet soil, it's a mechanical means. We had greenbrier, Styrex, in Town Lake Park, just completely obscuring the view of the lake from the park. So we use mechanical means there. We actually cut it and tied a rope and pulled it with a tractor to get them out of the trees. And we, I won't say rescued, but we uncovered a lot of redbud trees, some persimmon trees that now don't have to compete against all of that, get more light, more sun. They can have a better form that can be appreciated. So, and I think we're stay trained and informed with consulting with foresters and the Ag Extension and the consultants that we use. We again, we make sure that we're getting top quality people that know what they're doing. So, so we're proactive in many ways. But as Mr. Griesbeck said, we certainly still use chemicals when we need to appropriately, particularly for, say, woody vines along ditches and that kind of thing, and or fence lines that would be really a lot of work to mechanically pull out or trim and that kind of thing if it's mixed in there. But I don't see any conflict with what you're proposing and what we're doing. And I think Mr. Petit's crew is similarly doesn't use a lot of chemicals. But just wanted to make sure that you know that we're thinking about this too and are ahead of the curve in many respects.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for speaking for other staff as well.
Sure.
I'm sorry, where are we here? Did we have any further questions or comments?
Well, I'm very pleased to hear from Mr. Griesbeck and his conversations with staff, and it sounds like there aren't any problems with the text that's been proposed. So I wonder if fellow commissioners have concerns or questions.
I'm completely in support of this. Just this afternoon, I was telling somebody that they needed to weed whack the weeds and couldn't spray. So, totally aligned. My confusion or my issue is I want to support this. I do support it. But I couldn't tell if this was the IPM or if this was something that says develop an IPM, and then there were other items in here that talked about like the town pesticide policy. Wouldn't that be part of this? So we have to develop those things. There's what is the but it talks about a lot of things that need to happen. So I don't know that this is the ordinance or the policy. So I'm in support of it, and I'm in support of this saying, let's adopt an IPM based on these goals. But we have to yet develop it, so I wouldn't say that we're adopting this IPM. Let's adopt a motion to develop an IPM with pesticide policy. And
I strongly support that.
Plans for implementation, those kind of things. I think it talks about getting a consultant. It makes reference to the NC State folks. Is there a cost to that consultant?
The consultants that are available to us in cooperative extension would be free.
Okay.
And it would be whatever time they can give in the course of their work with agriculture or the green industry in Chatham County. And I wholeheartedly support your friendly suggestions that what I just did was tore the two pieces apart, and we could consider doing that as a board. The document has been utilized and passed almost verbatim by other municipalities. I believe that it was the city of South Miami and also the city of San Francisco. San Francisco originated this in 1996, and the city of South Miami adopted it almost verbatim. Again, all I did was to find and replace town of Pittsboro for the prior municipality that was mentioned. And absolutely, I think that it would be best for us to have our own integrated pest management guidelines developed by town staff. I offered this as a suggested starting point for that.
Well, in the spirit of that goal, I would suggest we could change just a couple of things on the resolution. And I would say on the last whereas, starting at the end of the first line, instead of the proposed, I would say and IPM program is in the best interest of the citizens of the town instead of state. And strike the rest of that sentence.
Which refers to the exhibit, which we're not going to endeavor.
However, in the therefore section, section 1, instead of adoption, I would say development of an IPM integrated pest management program. And then on the second item, on the second line, it says guidelines for the, I would say for an integrated. And I think that achieves what we're after.
It's a very specific set of suggestions. I'm following it. I'm wondering if you could repeat it for the record.
Yeah. So the last whereas, I would strike the words the proposed in front of the first IPM program and replace that with and. Right. Replace the word city with the word town. Strike the remainder of that whereas. Under the therefore, section 1, replace the word adoption with development. Okay. And under section 2, the second the in that sentence replaced with the word and.
Well, since we aren't approving guidelines that are attached as Exhibit A,
guidelines are guides to developing the policy.
Okay. All right. I see.
I think there are good suggestions in there, but it's not that we would, we would take from it. That would be probably important. And I think that says it.
Okay. Did you say and add such on that whereas hereby adopt the IPM program, or did you say and IPM?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To be
and approve and IPM program.
Approve the guidelines for and integrated pest management program attached here to us.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
and with regard to that, is that a motion that's been just made by George?
Moved. Seconded.
Okay. Motion by Michael Fiocco, seconded by John Bonnet. Those in agreement, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Great. Thank you so much. Regardless, it was a wonderful piece of joint writing. I just have a quick report on the plastic bags initiative, and that is that I had indicated that I was very discouraged at my very first conversation with the manager of the Food Line, pointing out to him that he was indeed the manager of the only grocery store in town except for the marketplace, and that and he really sort of brushed me off just a bit. And this time, when I went back to him after the young ladies had done the straw resolution, I went back to him and talked to him again about a public-private partnership that perhaps could be struck between Food Line and the town. With respect to giving bags out, he seemed very interested in the girls from the Girl Scout troops, if they wanted to set up a table like they oftentimes do at cookie time, that he would be more than welcome to have Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, any kind of scouts wanting to pass out reusable grocery bags to people as they came in, thinking that Saturday might be the best day for doing that. He even offered to establish a bring a bag, take a bag kind of a thing at the front of the store, so that if you forgot to bring your bag that day, and the trusty Girl Scouts were not out there, that you can take a bag from a hanger in there. And that he also wanted us to know that the Food Line Corporation was moving towards more environmental kinds of things, doing more bulk produce and fruits, and eliminating the plastics regarding there, and that oftentimes they have their reusable bags that have the Food Line advertisement on them. Oftentimes they have a buy one get one free, and they are all of $1, so
Very affordable.
they're very affordable, and they have sort of cute little slogans on them, like "Let us help you," LHTT. Anyway, so we're making some progress, and Brian Griesbeck's checking into the cost of, and I think communicating perhaps with our police chief, because the bags that the chief handed out at the last street fair.
We've been giving out those bags for at least 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah, and I think you told me they were most reasonable. So so we can choose to just put the town logo on it if you want. And in all fairness, I have to give a fair amount of credit to former Mayor Randy Voller, who happened to see me in the grocery store at this particular time a couple of months ago, when I was somewhat put off by the fact that the manager of the store really wasn't very interested in it. And Randy came up and said, what we need here is a public-private partnership. And I'm not, so I'm very grateful for that as an idea, Randy, and I will give you entire credit for that. And so as we all continue in our shopping environmentally, I will urge people to remember to take your bags, but if not, look for a Girl Scout or look for improvements that Food Line promises that they will make. And of course, our Chatham Marketplace, you don't have to remind them, because they are absolutely in very, very environmentally appropriate. By the way, I will also tell you, because I've just heard, Brian Griesbeck came in to see the young women when they were here talking about Save the Straw, and I asked him to come in and meet the Girl Scouts and to bring his drink with him, because you have a metal straw. so we're trying to set a good example at town level, and bamboo or metal, whatever your material is, there will be stars in your crown if you continue to use those kinds of things. All right, so
I just want to mention another thought about plastic bags. When I was visiting my daughter who lives in Vancouver, I thought it was interesting that the grocery stores there charge you for your plastic bags. Mm-hmm. And that really seems to help people to remember to bring their own bags, that they get charged for bags. So that's something that, I don't know if we could, but
I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do that, because policy, he indicated to me that corporate policy probably prevents them from doing certain things, but it probably also gives him the right to be able to do a few things like the Girl Scouts. So, anyway.
I was going to say about the straws, it also seems like a good solution if since it's a lot of the, like McDonald's and fast food, you can refill your drinks anyway. It seems like that it could be encouraged if people start bringing their own cups, to bring their cups like that for their drinks.
Yeah, I know the cruisers, that's what they have, and I know I go through the checkout thing on my phone and everything. They even have an app, as part of the app, you can just select a refill option. So it's a little bit less expensive even. Unfortunately, I Diet Mountain Dew every day, at least once or twice a day. I'm not bragging, don't be jealous. But I take advantage of that.
Well, one of the scouts had a little package, and she said, well, if you have a metal straw, like Brian Grusbeck had, you need a cleaner. And she had a little cleaner so that you could make sure that you were not spreading great germs or Ebola or anything like that. Anyway, and the Girl Scouts also told me, by the way, that once a straw is put down on the table, Jay, is this true? That if you tell your waitress that you don't want a straw, she can't take it off the table. Once it's put on the table, it's considered contaminated. So tell your waitress before she puts it down.
We will be moving over to the paper.
Oh, wait.
But we don't offer straws. We ask them if they need straws.
Okay. Yes.
Really, more or less, you ask for it if you need it.
That's what Barrington knows. You get a drink, you don't know enough to get a straw unless you ask for it.
Well, when the Girl Scouts came, they told me that Burley's, the Roadhouse, and the Root Cellar were the only ones who had so far indicated that they were moving towards paper straws, or no straws at all.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for your
Cut my cost too.
Well, it's such it's such a little thing, but it's one of those little things that, when you go for a walk, look down on, there's so many plastic straws down on the streets of Pittsburgh. It's just,
plastic circles.
And the circles, yeah, that's right. So it's a time for commissioner concerns. Jay Farrell?
The only thing I have, I spoke with you guys at the work session. Mark Davis had designed a Santa house, and he is to build it for the town. Will provide a Santa on Saturday and Sunday, and he's going to have a mailbox out front for kids to drop mail during the week. I recommended Page Vernon Park. Hopefully, I guess he just needs what we need to do legally. I don't really have the dimensions, but I would say somewhere around no bigger than 8 by 8 or 10 by 10. And I left the pictures that he had left me at home, of course. So if I could, whatever we need to do to move that. And he did say he would store the building after Christmas at his home and bring it back, if possible, next year, Thanksgiving in that area. I don't know. It'd be big enough for Santa to stand in. We're supposed to have a chair for Santa, and the kids can go in there, possibly one at a time.
It was a very festive drawing, and I really appreciate it. Sounds like we've got a citizen or maybe a county resident, ETJ resident, who would very much like to contribute to enhancing the spirit of the season with his own funds, his own equipment, his own labor, and we can provide the Santa, or he will provide the Santa.
He said he would do his best to have a Santa. Mm-hmm. He did say he had a Santa suit, but
and we just need
a lot of stuffing for it.
We need to agree to accommodate it on town property. Is that right?
Yes.
Just during the season when it's on display.
Yes.
I love the idea.
Yes, that's fun. Maybe you do it in the tree lighting.
Brian Grusbeck or Paul Mesick, do we need special legal consideration, some sort of indemnity agreement or anything?
You probably need some kind of contract with him for what he's going to do, when he's going to do it.
Okay.
There may need to be some liability issues involved. The town can probably insure it, but we can work on it. a couple months, we can do that.
Yeah. Could we ask, is there general approval by the board?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'll try to get some better dimensions and see what design.
Is it the Main Street program that does the tree lighting, or is that the Merchants Association?
BVA.
Okay.
With the Main
You
Street
also
support. We
are
support it.
affiliate, you're our liaison to PBA. You are. So, yes, if we could make sure that there's coordination.
We already have a tree lighting.
Yes, that's
right. But this would be on what, each weekend?
He assumed Saturday and Sunday would have it staffed with a Santa, and then be closed.
Two different Santas might be a little.
That might be a little confusing.
There's only one Santa on site at a time.
What's he doing, like, for the month of December, each weekend?
That's what he said, yeah.
Okay, so there would be multiple visitation opportunities, so there would be a different one.
Well, there are two young kids.
Yeah. The courthouse with our mayor.
Well, I danced with Santa last time, but I must admit that one of the things I have found out is that Santas are fairly expensive. I think we paid close to $400 for the Santa that appeared on the courthouse balcony with me, just to throw some stuff and light the lights.
I move to strike that from the record. We can't allow anybody younger children to read that.
Well,
They might be reading.
Now that I think of it, he also entertained children in the beauty shop before he came out.
That's right.
So he did have greater responsibility.
That's right. He sat in there, the kids came in and had their pictures taken and all that.
Okay. Well, we look forward. Thank you, Jay, for bringing that
Thank
up.
you.
Beth?
Thanks, Mr. Davis.
I don't believe I haven't been.
Michael?
Brian, you're going to love this.
Is by Lubbock, you mean I won't love it?
No, I got 6 downtown lights out.
Right now?
No, I don't know. There were 2 nights that I went through. One was after our work session on the 16th, and then one was this past Saturday evening. The globe lights.
Oh.
There were 6 of them.
Okay.
Which is surprising because this is kind of dark.
Yeah, I've had a complaint on Page Vernon Park.
Yeah,
And
that was one of them.
right there at the bookstore. The bookstore people said it would help them.
So we're not talking about the tree lights?
No, the trees
With street lights?
Okay.
great.
And that's fine, we can follow up on those.
That's Duke Power, right?
Yeah, we can follow up on those, but just for future reference, and we can continually market this, but people can call in or even go online directly and report light outages, but
that poll number.
Having heard this information, we can still follow up.
You have to know which light it is.
Yeah.
Okay, you just,
There should be a number on the pole.
there's a poll number on them.
But you can actually go on their website, you can zoom in on the light locations and get that information as well.
Wow.
So
Well, I do have that telephone number, so I'll
but we can still follow up
Yeah,
on it. That's
we'll
no
do it.
problem.
I did think something out here does.
It's like,
Brian, I'll get Ed to take care of it.
Okay, I do that. I just wanted to mention that a wheelchair ramp was just completed that goes from the Pittsburgh Presbyterian Church to the little park on the circle. It's technically owned by the Pittsburgh Presbyterian Church, but they have created this park in mind of having it open to the community. So it is now accessible to the public, to people in wheelchairs, and I just wanted to mention that my mother has funded the wheelchair ramp in honor of my father, which is also a tree planted there. But I went up there to take photographs, and there were people enjoying the park, and when they saw me, they thought they had to leave, and I wanted to be public record that this park, even though it's not technically owned by the town, the community is encouraged to enjoy it, especially after it's not so hot. There are a number of tables there. There's even a little stage. We could have an impromptu concert or a theater, whatever. It's not an elevated stage, but it's a cleared area. And there's going to be landscaping done. But I just wanted to put that out there, that the public is encouraged to enjoy the park.
Yes, I just have one concern. Well, I've had several comments, and it's in reference to the grocery store. People want another grocery store. They say food line, that's fine, but they want another grocery store. So I would like to see if the EDC could possibly research and try to recruit another grocery store. hopefully in place of paper.
I second that motion.
So the former Piggly Wiggly space, it's not going to be what they thought it was going to be. Is that correct?
Well, there was interest from,
IGA.
there's been interest on that property. Nobody's formally ruled it out or, submitted a formal application either.
I thought there was going to be
Tractor Supply was interested in it at one time.
But they're not coming.
Again, nobody's squashed it.
Samantha, will you make that as a formal motion?
Oh, yes. Motion.
Specifically, the town asks the EDC to look
To
into
research
the project.
possibly recruit to see what it would take to get another grocery store here, preferably something like Aldi's. No. Yes, Trader Joe's, something like that, preferably.
You've heard the motion by Pamela Baldwin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John Bonnet. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And so we
And I'll emphasize that I was on the founding board of the Chatham Marketplace Cooperative Grocery, and I also still believe firmly that we need a third option in town.
I will bring that message to the next meeting.
Thank you.
John?
Yes, this goes some time back, conversation with Mr. Messick at some point regarding possible additional ideas on evacuation route for the Powell Place development. I'm wondering if you might bring a presentation of what those additional ideas are and any progress might have been made for the next meeting.
Sure, but there has been no progress.
So those trees that were moved from Powell Place seem to be dying, and I've contacted Edward Holmes about this, and I don't know if they've taken any action, but from the looks of things, I don't think those trees are going to make it unless something is done right away. I don't know if anybody can put some pressure on them to do something before it's too late on those trees.
These were moved from what location?
These were the trees, the street trees, that were going to be moved so they could widen that road on the curve. And they had these really interesting machines that just came and picked up these trees and moved them and then replanted them. But I don't think they're being watered adequately. I mean, it's definitely been dry conditions. We need to change how much the water is. But the trees are looking, it looks like fall, but it's not fall. They're trying to yellow.
We have inspectors that go by there and keep in contact with construction and pass those inspections along.
Mr. Grisbeck, since you mentioned that will be added to the list of conversations over there, I have heard concern about the Holmes Brothers pledge, there not being any parking on the street, is not being consistently observed, that construction traffic, construction parking is happening on the street, and even if it's just temporary unloading, I recall they had pledged that all of that would be on that site, not on the street.
It seems like they've had trouble just since I live in that neighborhood. It seems like when there's activity going on site and there's deliveries that come, they can't really park there because these machines are going back and forth because they're not parking on the street. But now they've taken the shoulder off, so now in addition to everything else, the road has no shoulder at all. So it feels a little daunting to go through there right now, but temporary.
They took the curbing down, didn't they?
Yeah, the curb. Yeah, I feel sorry for the people that live back, that their property's back up to that because there's no buffer. It's just construction, like right in their front yard. I feel for them. I really do. I can imagine there'd be something put in place there, cut down on the amount of dust. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, it really is. That's the right word. And I was thinking there were going to be berms all along those existing houses that are there to the south of the project.
You got that thing back here. She's going to take a look.
Is there a motion to adjourn or any further business that needs to come? Moved by John Bonnet, seconded by Michael Fiocco. Those in favor, please rise and depart.
8:58.